Nice.
Oh,
There we are.
There's a purple light above my head.
There is a purple
Now
now.
it's
It's
an
like
orange.
now it's an orange light above your head.
It is.
FYI, it's stinking hot out.
Yeah. So hope that you all are surviving this unseasonable heat.
It's not good.
We have Lee over here who is barely surviving this unseasonable heat.
Everyone, like, in my tours, they're like, oh, but you're from Virginia. And I'm like, yeah,
It's still
I'm moving to
hot.
Iceland.
Irrelevant, which is why.
It's not even paid.
Yeah, but one of the good things about tonight is we are going to talk about someplace with a much more reasonable climate.
It's like 50 degrees or less.
Yeah, we're going to be going all the way to the West Coast. We are going to be talking about the city of Seattle, the Emerald City sitting there up in the Pacific Northwest, where it is definitely much cooler than the weather we had here in Richmond today. So, yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. And thank you for
Bearing with us
bearing
during
with us.
illness.
You may still hear a little bit in my voice, but this time last week, no, this just was not happening last week. So, thanks for bearing with us. Thank you for understanding the week of a delay. And yeah, we're here and ready to go ahead and talk about some spooky stuff again. But yeah, other than that, this last month's been pretty chill. April's usually a pretty chill month for us. Of course, we got tours going, but really nothing too out of the ordinary or anything like that these past few weeks.
No, we were on a podcast, The Witching Hour.
Yes, that's right. We were on the Witching Hour podcast last Thursday. I had just barely got my voice back enough to be able to do that, and
It was cutting it close.
It was. I still had a couple of coughing fits mid-podcast, but made it through. So if you want to check that out, it's a long one. They do like a 2-hour podcast, and had a great time talking with them about a lot of spooky stuff. And you can catch that on YouTube.
Yep.
So you go ahead, look that up, and
That's the only thing that we've done besides tours.
yeah, I think so. Over these last few weeks. So yeah. But anyways, yes, thank you, Alex. I'm feeling, I would say, about 90% better. So definitely much better than I was this time last week.
She was miserable.
I was. Oh yeah, the only other thing that since it's been like 3 weeks since we talked to you, we went to St. Louis.
Yes.
So we went to St. Louis,
Which is where he got sick.
which yeah, we think
Picked it up in the airport.
picked it up there or in the airport or something like that. But anyways, yeah, basically been sick almost since the last time that we were live. It was a miserable couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in St. Louis, cool city.
For those of you that don't know, AuthorCon, Scares the Care
that's
AuthorCon,
right.
that's now their second city, and that's happening shortly. This fall.
I think it's the first weekend of October.
Yeah.
So
So if you're close to being out there, or you want to go to St. Louis and need an excuse to go, there's one for you.
and I will say, without getting into too much into it, St. Louis exceeded expectations. I first time I'd ever been there, and had a good time. So definitely recommend checking it out if you've never been. But with that, we do have another city on the agenda tonight as we go ahead and chat up our spooky Seattle stuff.
Yes. So as Chris mentioned, Seattle is, of course, known as the Emerald City. It's a testament to perseverance, outright stubbornness of the people who live there. Persevering through the several economic boom and bust cycles, the Great Fire of 1889, earthquakes, flooding, and of course much, much more. It has left Seattle stronger and sometimes rebellious in his community, and it's also a community with some restless and industrious spirits. So our first place, of course, everybody probably knows this, it is Pike's Place Market.
Pike, please.
Pike.
It's not plural.
I'm sorry. Pike's Peak is always in my head, and
I
so
know.
when I say Pike, it comes out Pikes no matter
I'm
what.
just saying that,
Just so you all know.
yes.
Anyway, so this is one of the oldest and most recognizable landmarks in Seattle, Pike Place Market. In the early 1900s, the city of Seattle faced an unreasonably high cost for food, which, along with the complaints of the farmers and the low prices from commission houses, led to the city council establishing a market at Pike Place. Opening in 1907, Pike Place Market brought together farmers and customers to the economic benefit of both. The relief that it provided to the growing city would help leverage Seattle's growth for decades. However, the market's promising history was threatened in the 40s and the 50s with the advent of supermarkets, commercial centers, and of course cars. The popularity began to decrease, and during the 1960s, it was on the verge of being demolished. But the people of Seattle were not ready to give up on the market. In 1971, a widely supported initiative was put forward to invest in the market and preserve it for future generations. Thanks to this foresight, Pike Place Market is one of the most famous public markets in the world, and it is a must-see for anybody who's visiting Seattle. We'll be going there soon. Strolling through its hallways, you will notice that although it still serves its purpose of providing fresh produce and its well-known fish tossing stands, the market is also home to plenty of arts and crafts stands, bookshops, jewelry, antique stores, and much, much more. There's a food tour through there, folks. Let me just say that. Despite its lively atmosphere, the market is also home to some spirits that seem content to linger on. Spirited shoppers peruse the stalls while ghostly vendors still hawk their wares. It seems that the energy of Pike Place is just too much for some to let go of. For years, the living denizens of Pike Place have shared their stories of ghostly visions and strange happenings around the market, giving its already dynamic space yet another form of eye-opening interest. One such tale comes from the earliest years of the site, starting decades before the idea of a market came to anyone's mind. It starts with Angeline, a Duwamish name Kikasuku. Okay. Leslie, sorry. I'm sorry.
Kikasuku.
Sorry. The daughter of Chief Seattle, for whom the city was named. She lived below Park Street through the 1850s, when no other natives were allowed to reside within the city's premises. She died on May 31st, 1896, at 85 years old, about a decade before Pike Place Market first opened. Despite the fact that she never laid eyes on the market in life, it seems that the proximity to where she lived for most of her life is enough to draw her to the market thereafter. Over the years, people have seen her atop the stairs of the Western Avenue by a rough wooden column at the center of the lower level, moving slowly in a way that draws attention to her. But she appears to be as real as anyone else there until she abruptly disappears before your eyes. Why she lingers on in this particular space is up for debate, but we like to think that perhaps she's just making herself known in a place that will ensure that she is not soon forgotten. Next, we have someone with an indisputable link to the place, Mr. Frank Goodwin. Goodwin was one of the original developers of the market, and he seems just as intent on seeing it succeed today as he did during his life. He has been encountered by many around the Alibi Stairs near the southeast end of the market. He introduces himself as Frank, and he may ask you if you need any help getting around the market, just like he did when he was alive. And despite the fact that, of course, he passed away in 1954. This haunting is a bit of a family affair, as Arthur Goodwin, Frank's nephew, allegedly looks down from the window at what today is the Goodwin Library, but what used to be his office decades ago. It is said that he has been swinging at a golf club in the library, which is appropriate considering for his love of the game. Arthur also seems to like his coffee, which he seems to be a resident ghost at Ghost Alley Espresso, not far from the Alibi Stairs. Well, our first few spirits at Pike Place were fairly benign. The same cannot be said for this next one, though it may also fall squarely into the realm of the urban legend.
I literally just did that and ran upstairs.
That's about perfect covers.
He needs better acoustics up further. Mm-hmm. All right, so it said in the 1950s a barber used to sing her customers to sleep with lullabies, and then while they were comfortably snoozing, she would steal their wallets and cash. Allegedly, before the renovations of the market in the 1970s, an area in the floor that she worked in gave in, and she fell through to her death. She is heard and seen at night singing haunting echoes of lullabies. Cleaners at the market have have also heard someone singing softly when they are alone there at night. The ghost of a young stable boy is said to haunt the market toy store, Maryville's. He is believed to be one of the victims of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, which killed over 1,000 people in the city. According to eyewitness accounts, the boy is a playful one, and he often throws things around the store. However, he has become more settled since the store owner made him a room with his own bed. And finally, at least for the market, we have Mr. D's Greek Deli in the Triangle Building. The owner tells of spirits known to fight in the downstairs walk-in freezer. Some of his staff are so frightened of the dueling spirits they refuse to go in there. So, if you're for some spooky shopping and of course some fish tossing, there's no better place that you can check out than Pike's Place.
Excuse me. All right. So our next stop, we are going to go from the Pacific Inlet waterfront to the other side of Seattle on the shore of Lake Washington. Here at the end of 57th Avenue, we have Martha Washington Park, a beautiful open space that leaves few clues to what once stood here. From 1900 to 1971, the Martha Washington School for Girls provided resident supervision for delinquent girls. First on Queen Anne Hill near the city center, then on Mercer Island in the middle of Lake Washington, and finally on property at Brighton Beach in the southeast end of Seattle on Lake Washington. The state of Washington assumed control of the school in 1957 and operated it until 1971 when it closed. Since then, most traces of the school have been wiped away to make space for Martha Washington Park. The school site was originally the home of Judge Smith, who built his Morningside estate on 5 acres facing Lake Washington in 1867. Smith built a home with a nursery and a boathouse. He also built a hollow stairway into an enormous madrona tree on the property. It was quite the beautiful and elaborate estate. Meanwhile, in 1900, Major Cicero Newell and his wife Emma Cicero and the Women's Century Club founded the Parental School for Boys and Girls to serve as a reform school. In 1920, Judge Smith sold his estate to the Seattle School District to be the home of what had become the Martha Washington School for Girls. Judge Smith had been active on and off the bench as an advocate for troubled youth. The school built a classroom and dorm building in 1921 and added a dorm and a gymnasium in 1930. The school kept the Morningside greenhouse, boathouse, and caretaker's residence. The girls at the school ranged in age from 10 to 16. They were educated in traditional housekeeping activities like cooking, cleaning, laundry, and gardening. Many of the trees that now populate Martha Washington Park were planted by the students of the girls' school. There were never many students at the school. Attendance ranged from 30 to 80 girls, and there were never more than 10 teachers. Rumors swirled about all sorts of horrifying acts at the girls' school. Rumors of violence, murder, and suicide were associated with the school while it was open. It is thought that the janitor of the school had assaulted and murdered a girl by hanging her from one of the trees on the property. There were even allegations of human experimentation. Many of these tales remain unconfirmed due to the lack of any formal records. The girls at Martha Washington were considered to be the bad kids. They were sent to the girls' school because they couldn't fit in anywhere else. They were regarded as subjects of the state of Washington, and the way that they were treated had parallels with patients at mental institutions. Many of these incidents were likely covered up or simply unreported. Some stories do survive, though. In 1957, the state of Washington assumed control of the school and operated it until 1971 when it closed. The property was sold to the city of Seattle in 1972, which brings us to Martha Washington Park. The city left only a few remnants of the one-time school, like the hollow staircase leading to the madrona trees, which some people say is a portal to the past. The arch at the school entrance was preserved and memorialized at Green Lake Park. During the day, the park attracts routine visitors, and it is a popular place to linger on in the days when the sun decides to shine on Seattle. However, when nighttime comes, the empty park takes on an ominous and haunting atmosphere. The old madrona tree is still present and thought to have ghostly energies attached to it. And the area where the stairway Judge Smith once built is still there and is thought to be, again, a portal. Visitors often feel a presence or become uneasy in their area like they're being watched. Disembodied footsteps and screaming have also been reported in the park. Teenagers who visit in odd numbers have had a spirit follow them home. A mom who was once visiting the park one evening took a picture of her son and noticed behind him an apparition of a girl looking right at her. Sightings of a girl have been reported multiple times by multiple sources as well. Some of the students of Martha Washington just simply haven't left. They still roam the grounds of their old school. They tend to hide amongst the vegetation, making themselves known only to certain passersby. The apparition of a translucent young girl in a nightgown is the most frequently seen spirit. She is said to sometimes walk along with those who are taking a stroll. She has given quite a few people a good scare and has sent packs of people running out of the park. One story comes from a woman named Pam who visited the park early in the morning with a couple of friends. As they walked around the empty park, one of Pam's friends meandered off to check on something that had caught her interest. Pam continued walking with her other friend, but paused when she caught movement from the corner of her eye. She expected to see her other friend coming back, but was instead greeted by the sight of a girl in a white nightgown walking up to her and her friend. Pam froze at the unexpected visitor, and then the blood rushed out of her face as she realized this girl was translucent. Pam's friend didn't understand what was happening at first, but then she too noticed the little girl spirit, and the friends took off at a sprint back to their car, screaming for their absent friend along the way. With the park's relatively small size, their friend caught up as they approached the car, puzzled at the fuss. As they all hopped into the car, Pam and her friend were frantically babbling about what they had seen. They attempted to start the car to make an escape, but the new car would not cooperate. For several minutes, the group of friends' collective panic grew. They started feeling ice cold despite the comfortable temperatures outside. Finally, the car started and the group sped away. They have never returned to Martha Washington Park since. While some find their experiences terrifying, many troubled teenage girls who walk through the park are comforted by the spirits. The former students sympathize with the strenuous modern-day lifestyles facing teens today. Some teens have said they come out of the park feeling at ease. On the other hand, abusers have been tormented while strolling through the park. The ghosts are said to harass those who have abused and taken advantage of young girls, scaring them off and sometimes even following them home. Martha Washington Park is also an indigenous burial ground for the Duwamish tribe. The spirits have been angry for quite some time as modern-day construction has stirred up the earth and damaged the remains of their ancestors. Many have seen apparitions of the natives fishing or holding athletic competitions. Some have also seen the residuals of their ceremonies, catching glimpses of the elders wearing their traditional headdresses.
Not on ours.
No, it is not. Not this time.
All right, so we're going to move to the deceptively named Capitol Hill neighborhood in northern central Seattle. Why is this here when Washington State Capitol is really in the city of Olympia and a couple of hours down the road? Well, there's a couple of rumored tales about this swirling around the real estate developer who laid out much of the neighborhood in the early 1900s. Mr. James A. Moore, one story is that Moore had hoped that he could lure the state government to relocate to Seattle from Olympia, which was clearly never happened. And the other story is that he named it after the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Denver, Colorado, which was his wife's hometown. Either way, Seattle ended up with a Capitol Hill neighborhood without an actual capital, but we digress.
What?
Can we not lure him over my ankle to draw blood, please?
That's up to him.
Okay.
Stop being dramatic.
That hurt. You got claws.
Sorry. Pardon the interruption.
Bloodletting.
Oh.
Okay, moving on.
Yes, moving on.
All right, so what brings us to this area that is a structure that was built in 1925 to be the home of the Women's Century Club, but it's better known today as the Harvard Exit Theater. For many years, the Women's Century Club members were dedicated to getting the right to vote and equality for women, From the early days of the Women's Century Club, some women members lived in the building on the second floor and in the apartment on the third floor through the 1970s. The Women's Century Club still meets in the building to this day, but in 1968 they actually sold the building with the stipulation that the lobby never be altered, a stipulation that is still in effect to this day. The individuals who purchased the building, Boeing engineers and movie buffs Jim Osteen and Art Bernstein, converted the building into a cinema. The name was derived from the odd fact that the guests would purchase tickets and enter off of Roy Street, but at the end of the show they would exit through a different door facing Harvard Avenue, hence Harvard Exit. The partners sold the theater to the Landmark Theaters in 1979, and they operated it until 2015 when the theater closed its doors for good. It has since been renovated for office use and is currently leased by the Consulate of Mexico. The consulate takes up about 70% of the building and uses the space to process visas, create passport documentations, and perform consultations. They also have private offices and a conference room. The first floor main lobby, which has never been altered as promised, is described as being grand and glorious, full of 1920s era ambiance, featuring a grand piano and a beautiful chandelier.
I'm so sorry.
Hi. I am so going to get attacked tonight.
I think I spooked him a little. I don't actually think I touched him though, so I don't think it was me.
Mommy's trying to read.
Comfortable chairs. Could use one of those right now. Some tables and lamps are all grouped around a huge fireplace. Now, the hauntings of this building seem to go back to the very beginning. There are several things about the Harvard Exit Theater that the people who have passed through there can give explanations for the paranormal activities. So, for starters, the turn of the century, a man was murdered in a brawl that took place in a house that was torn down to make room for the Women's Century Club building. Does he still linger on the property? Well, it's hard to say for sure, but a number of spirits that linger around here, for whatever reason they might have, he could be one of them. There's a portly, slightly seen-through gentleman wearing an old-fashioned suit that has identified himself as Peter. He's a fairly laid-back spirit that loves hanging out in the building during its theater days. Investigators Jane Reese and J.R. Benight recall watching the film in the main theater. Jane felt an invisible presence playfully toying with her hair over her neck. Out of the corner of her eyes, she spied an invisible presence. She spied a flicker of light down in the front of the auditorium, just to the right of the screen, by the exit door. She then saw a translucent form of a portly gentleman in profile with a distinguished demeanor, watching the film on the screen and enjoying himself. Grace and Benight also claimed to have had contact with another male spirit with a British-like accent, but no name was gotten. This suggests that perhaps Peter has a fellow male spirit here, possibly a mate, and some male bonding is going on in the main theater. You know, boys not out. The pair of them have helped themselves to free showings whenever the place was empty. On other occasions, one or both of these ghostly film enthusiasts have been known to reorganize the film canisters around the projector room, much to the annoyance of the living. On several occasions over the years, the theater managers have opened up the building and found a movie projector showing a film to an unseen audience. They think that not only Peter and the unknown male enjoy the films, but other unseen guests, perhaps a female apparition who is spotted in the balcony, is enjoying them as well. In the 1940s, a woman was suffocated somewhere in the building. She could be the entity in the balcony, perhaps the same entity that gets her kicks in scaring administration personnel on the second floor. A janitor who was vacuuming the rugs suddenly got a sense that she wasn't alone in the auditorium. After turning off the vacuum cleaner, she glanced up to the balcony and saw the figure wearing an old-fashioned dress standing there, though she couldn't make up the hands or the face. Another young woman at a different time saw the same apparition in more complete form, also standing in the balcony. The style of the dress makes many think that they might be a member of the Women's Century Club, still checking in on their meeting space. Two different female entities and their friends have been seen on the first floor lobby in person, and photos have supposedly taken of the supposedly empty room. One-time theater manager Janet Wainwright, who was the theater manager for 10 years, met these spirits and felt that they were positive and helpful. One of her first days on the job, Janet walked into the lobby and was startled to see a woman sitting in a chair near the fireplace, reading a book. The woman had her hair in a bun on top of her head and wore a long floral dress, and she was just slightly see-through. Much to Janet's fascination and horror, the woman slowly melted into thin air. At other meetings in the lobby, the ghostly female entity would look up at Janet or any other human being standing there, smile pleasantly, turn off the lamp, and walk out of the room. At least she turns off the lamp she was using.
Rather polite. It's nice to have a
Conscientious ghost.
yes, conscientious ghost that will be mindful of your electric bill.
Yes. It was tradition to have a fire burning in the first floor fireplace for the enjoyment of film patrons waiting to go into the auditorium for the evening's film presentation. This was the responsibility and duty of the evening theater manager. It was the first job Janet did upon arriving. Every once in a while, the fire was already burning brightly before Janet had arrived. The spirit had helped with the chores. On these occasions, the chairs had been moved around the fire as if people had been chatting, enjoying each other's company, and they had always been moved back to their places before the closing of the theater door, or later that night.
Sometimes Janet didn't have to enter the darkened lobby to light the fire because she would see a tall female entity leave the lobby, switching on the lights as she left on both the first and third floors. It is thought that this tall entity could be the spirit of Bertha K. Landis, the strong president of the Women's Century Club and the City Federation of Women's Clubs, who was also Seattle's first female mayor in 1926. She seems to like to help out the theater managers and keep an eye on the place while hanging out in a place that she loved. On one occasion, a man working in the second floor administration office suddenly heard a woman crying as if her heart was breaking. Going out into the hall, he saw a female in emotional distress. Thinking that she was a real human being, he approached her to offer comfort, but she vanished into the air. Several other women working in these offices through the years have also seen this full-formed female apparition floating down the hallway, inspiring them to flee as fast as possible down to the main floor. Alan Blangy, a man not easily scared and a bit of a skeptic concerning ghosts, became the theater manager after Janet Wainwright's tenure. He had an uneasy sense that something in the building was hostile to him. This something made itself known one evening when Blangy and his assistant manager were in the process of locking up the theater for the night. Suddenly, he heard a loud bang, so he quickly went back inside. He heard people talking in the third floor lobby, so he went up to investigate. While no one was there, he did hear the side exit door open and close. He went over to be sure the door had closed tightly. It hadn't. Someone or something on the other side was pulling against him, stopping him from shutting the door. He finally did so, but opened the door again with his assistant by his side, so he had support in confronting these strange people. Both men opened the door 5 seconds later, but found that no one was there. The third floor metal fire escape would have made a lot of noise if anyone had gone down it. After this experience, Blangy no longer sensed any hostility, but instead felt welcome. It seems that he had passed the test. So,
Park, market, former theater. Now we're going to the bar.
Yeah, heck yeah, we're going.
Because bar.
Yeah, so Seattle, known for its weird and grungy ways. Case in point, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Temple of the Dog.
You get the idea.
All formed up in Seattle. So, I mean, if you are even the slightest bit, familiar with 90s grunge, 90s metal, 90s rock, Seattle, total hotbed. And I mean, not to, certainly plenty of bands coming out of there outside the 90s as well. It's been quite the scene. Now, that's the reason for all these bands. It's part of the reason why the city has this cult-like following that it's known for. That said, tech bros tend to hold sway over Seattle culture today, but Seattle's grungy roots are still there if you know where to look for it. One such bastion was Rebar, a tiny lounge in the downtown Capitol Hill area. Although towered over by the nearby high-rises, the regulars of the Rebar partied hard. Over the years, the venue was home to artists, goths, punks, and party people who just want to jump headfirst into a dive bar. But aside from being one of the city's coolest bars and a long-held safe place for the LGBTQ community, Rebar was also quite haunted. Before the building at 1114 Howell Street was built, the site was occupied by a boarding house and a relatively unremarkable cafe called Pete's Coffee Shop. During those days, death and hard times cast a hazy shadow over the building. French civil engineer Francois Duval died in the building in 1910 while sitting in a rocking chair. Another tenant was known to sell resurrection plants, plants that seemed to come back from the dead, as an attempt to make a living. Pete's Coffee Shop was also rife with burglaries and drunkards wreaking havoc. In 1930, Pete's was torn down and a new building was erected. The new building went through a number of owners before becoming the Nighthawk Tavern, known simply as the Nighthawk to Seattle locals. And so began the building's long history of creating a place for Seattle's LGBTQ community. The Nighthawk mainly booked cabarets and entertainment geared towards the city's gay nightlife. In the mid-1970s, the building hosted a venue called Thirsties, which was very similar to the Nighthawk, though was with a much dirtier name. Thirsties became Axel Rock in the 1980s. This time it was a dance-driven venue made to attract the gay club scene. Alex Herbin and his partner Rick, also known as Axel and Rocky, ran the club with vengeance. Sadly, they were blindsided by the AIDS epidemic, like many in the LGBTQ community and black communities. Axel passed away not too long after his diagnosis, and Axel Rock closed down. Despite the mounting tragedies, the AIDS crisis didn't stop the people of Seattle. Axel Rock became Sparks Tavern, also known as the S. The S was a gay and lesbian bar that held full-length plays inside the bar. In January 1990, Rebar moved in, marking the beginning of an era. Only a few months after the opening, Nirvana chose the bar as the place for the release party of Nevermind, one of the most critically acclaimed albums of all time. In a very rock and roll fashion, Nirvana was kicked out of their own release party after getting too drunk and causing a ruckus at the bar. The band members began ripping posters off the walls, started a food fight, and smashed several bottles of Jack Daniels on the floor. Needless to say, the party launched an entire genre of music and the city of Seattle into the limelight.
Still rude with the alcohol.
Yeah. And party foul.
Yes.
Now, Rebar became the spirit of Seattle and a few hundred square feet. The bar kept on as a safe space for the gay community while also attracting droves of goths, punks, hipsters, and all-around misfits. Unfortunately, Rebar closed during COVID. They initially hoped to come back, but those plans fell through. While Rebar doesn't have a physical home, they still stay active on social media, promoting events in line with what they hosted during their heyday. The staff and regulars at the Rebar know that it was haunted. Given the history of the site, it's fair to assume that the ghosts and spirits opted to stick around for some good times and wild parties. The first ghost one might notice is that of an old-school 1970s leather gang. Clad in black leather, he isn't at all the shy type. He tends to appear and vanish as if he owns the place, marching around the bar without a care in the world. He tends to bump into patrons and push them out of his way. Nobody knows where he's going, but he's always on a mission. Sometimes he will simply walk through someone. Patrons have complained of a dizzying whoosh sound as the leather daddy walks on by. The spirit of a woman from the 1930s is also seen around the bar. She's said to be one of the building's original owners. Though she's seemingly small and frail, she is quite boisterous. She is known to startle the guests, then mock them when they jump in fear. One staff member in particular had her appear right behind him, scaring him to high hell and then laughing at him afterwards. She then disappeared into what he described as a light portal. Another ghost story is about a woman who was an alcoholic who would often come to the bar to sulk sometime in the 1940s. She lived an overall sad and unfulfilling life and repeatedly scolded and lectured other bar patrons. Today, her ghost is periodically seen sobbing on the west side of the bar. There's also the spirit of a strange man in the men's restroom. He's usually heard whistling in the bathroom stalls after closing time. Strangely enough, nobody's ever actually seen the ghost. Whenever the staff go into the restroom to look for the whistler, they find the stalls empty. While the spirits of rebar might need to find someplace new to party these days, in Seattle, it's never hard to find a place to party hard. At least, not if you know where to look.
All right, so after all this running around Seattle, you guys need a place to sleep, right?
So, question. Yep. So, familiar with any tales of a spectral Kurt Cobain? I am not.
I'm not aware of, but
Yeah.
I listen. I really like to. They prefer to talk about conspiracy more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And the ones
plenty
that
of.
don't, they're
yeah.
very protective over him, so they
Yeah.
don't like to talk about him.
Yeah, no, makes sense. But no spectral talk. Of course, I lost track of how many conspiracy theory TV shows have covered the surroundings of his passing. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I didn't find anything in my search, but I wasn't searching specifically for him.
no.
I was just trying to give you a good general rundown of Seattle's spooky cases.
Oh yes, and
And research for myself because we're going to be there soon.
yeah, mission accomplished.
All right, so we're going to go back to the heart of historic Seattle, just a few blocks from Pike Place Market. We have the Mayflower Park Hotel, opening in 1927. The hotel has long been near the beating heart of the city. Ugh. Pardon. Tell you, I've been up since 5:30. And of course, claims to be the oldest continually operated hotel in downtown Seattle. Its facade includes an extensive terracotta detailing, giving this historic landmark a classy touch of architectural flair. Originally, it was built as the Begornian Hotel by Stefan Berg, a prominent Seattle realtor and builder who previously built a number of other hotels in the city, as well as apartments and family homes. With 240 rooms, the hotel was constructed in 6 months at a cost of $750,000, opening to the public ahead of schedule on the evening of July 16, 1927. It was sold in 1933 and renamed the Hotel Mayflower. And
Finally became Mayflower Park.
I was like, sorry, wait a minute, I missed a word here. It was renamed the Mayflower Park Hotel in 1974 after it was purchased by Marie and Bernie Dempsey. The hotel had been in foreclosure and was in dire need of repair. The Dempseys and their business partners managed to save the structure and return it to its gleaming origins, which still puts it on full display today. We're sure that was some relief to the hotel residents' spirits. As with many historic hotels, the Mayflower Park Hotel serves as a hub for spirited activity. With so many people coming and going over the years, it's a little surprise that some of their spirits have lingered on here. For some of them, the hotel may have been their final stop on this mortal coil, either by chance or by their own design. For others, the hotel may hold some fond memories that drew them back, and there, after their time had, of course, come to an end. And for others still, their reasons may be a total mystery, but they have returned to the Mayflower Park all the same. For those, in the early years, an old man lived on the 6th floor, specifically in room 1120. No one knows how he died, but died he did, and his spirit was loath to leave the Mayflower Park. His ghost has allegedly refused to check out of the hotel, and multiple unrelated incidents guests have claimed to have seen this former tenant. Some have seen the man moving between rooms, others have felt his presence in the room. His mysterious origins have left people to refer to this entity simply as the man. Despite somewhat ominous moniker, those that are familiar with him claim that he's a benevolent spirit who just seems to be content to mind his own business in his rooms. Amongst other experiences at the hotel, one stands above the rest. It started as a fairly boring fashion of an employee who was busy mopping the floor. He set the mop in the bucket, turned his back for a moment, then when he turned back, the mop and the bucket vanished. There was no one else around, and it would have been impossible to take these items anywhere in such a short and abrupt fashion. The black blanket didn't stay gone for long, though, as the employee discovered them in a short time later, one floor down from where he had been working. Perhaps the spirit thought that their mess should take priority. Just saying. So if you like spooky hotels with a dash of terror...
Without
without
a dash of terror. Because the hauntings there are fairly on the benign side.
Yes. This might be what you're looking for. It actually is a very popular hotel for people to stay at who are going on cruises out of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every single cruise group that I've been following lately, they're like, oh, you need to stay at the Mayflower.
And Alex suggests that haunted rock and roll could be a fun research rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of Elvis.
Lots of, yeah, I was going to say,
yeah.
Graceland's going to be on there. That's for sure.
You could probably almost do an entire show just on Elvis hauntings.
Oh, for sure.
Because
Elvis is an alien.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones was right. He's an alien.
Elvis isn't dead.
He's an alien.
He just what?
He went back to his home planet.
Elvis didn't die. He just went home.
Yep. Elvis isn't dead. He just went home.
So, now, if you like Mayflower Park Hotel, well, we're not done with hotels yet.
But this one also has become something else too.
Yeah, but we're still not done with hotels even after this. But anyways, so sitting on the ashes of the Great Seattle Fire of 1889, the Cadillac Hotel has seen its share of the city's history and has ghost stories to go with it. While this 3-story Victorian Italianate-style building has left its hotel days behind, it is still bustling with paranormal activity. In 1889, a blaze started in the basement of Claremont & Company's cabinet shop on Front Street and Madison Avenue, causing millions in property damage and destroying all 25 blocks of the business district. Surprisingly, the fire itself only claimed a few lives. The same cannot be said for the cleanup, which, despite the city's best efforts, led to the deaths of dozens of workers in the following days. These dedicated men left a lingering impact on the city, and it's believed that they contribute to some of the hauntings in the neighborhood that was rebuilt in the years that followed. Amongst the rebuilding effort was the Elliott House at 2nd Avenue and South Jackson Street, which opened in 1890 and included 56 rooms. In the years after, it would become known as both the Derrick Hotel and the Star Lodge, but it wasn't until 1906 that it would take its final name as the Cadillac Hotel. At its opening, the upper floors mostly housed workmen and laborers, local men who were paying anywhere between 25 to 50 cents a night. The first floor, on the other hand, served as the home of several local businesses, including a lunch counter, a bar, a drugstore, and a few affordable restaurants. In 1970, an arsonist set fire to the Ozark Hotel at Westlake Avenue and Lenora Street, killing 21 people and injuring 13 more. Standing over a mile away, the Cadillac wasn't impacted by the blaze, but in the aftermath, the Seattle City Council quickly passed the Ozark Ordinance, a new law that required all hotels and apartments to be equipped with fire sprinkler systems. Unable to afford the necessary upgrades, the Cadillac was forced to close its doors for the next 30 years, leaving only the business space on the first floor still operational. In February of 2001, a 6.8 magnitude earthquake shook the Cadillac with such extreme force that the brick facade completely collapsed. Fearing that the rest of the building would soon follow, the owner petitioned to have it demolished by March of that year. But as luck would have it, this unfortunate event would prove to be the end of the historic Cadillac Hotel. Historic Seattle, a preservation organization founded in 1974, came to the Cadillac's rescue after previously saving the rest of Pioneer Square and registering it as a historic neighborhood. With the support of the City of Seattle Office of Economic Development, Historic Seattle purchased the damaged and aging structure and immediately began renovations, repairing the original wood frame windows and exterior masonry walls, as well as adding steel braces to the east, west, and south elevations for reinforcement. Parapets were reconstructed, brick wall ties were added, and the building saw the addition of numerous interior structural reinforcements, making certain that an earthquake would not threaten the Cadillac's foundation again. A nightclub called the Phoenix Underground was the last business to operate out of the Cadillac's ground floor. In 2005, the space was repurposed as the Klondike Gold Rush Museum, a facility run by the National Park Service that explores the history of the region. The Klondike Gold Rush began in earnest in 1897, and it wasn't long before Seattle became known as the gateway to the gold fields. As many as 70,000 hopefuls would flock to the city over the next few years, hoping to try their luck at striking it rich. A notoriously dangerous job, many of the men who came to the area looking for a new life were never seen again. Some were lost to the wild, working long days and cold nights in some of the country's most dangerous conditions, while others fell victim to their peers, casualties of a lawless dog-eat-dog society where greed and jealousy quickly turned men into murderers. To this day, the spirits of these men can still be felt in the Cadillac Hotel, where many of them had stayed during their quest for gold. The upper floors and elevator are the most haunted areas. The most common ghosts include loggers, fishermen, and railroad and shipyard workers. Visitors claim they've seen apparitions wandering in this building's upper floors where the working men commonly stayed. Others have reported strange feelings of a ghostly presence in the elevator and occasional strange, seemingly paranormal noises. That said, the most well-known paranormal activity in the hotel is that of a woman and her child, both of whom can be heard crying throughout the hotel, especially at night. It's said that the woman was a single mother who had fallen on hard times, forced to find refuge at the Cadillac after being evicted from her house. But life did not get easier for the young mother. As her luck continued to deteriorate, so did her sanity, until one night she committed the most unforgivable of acts, taking the life of her only child, followed by her own. Now, since the building is now run by the National Park Service, the spooky nature of the building is usually downplayed today. But if you get the chance to visit, maybe keep your eyes and ears open for the echoes of Cadillac Hotel's past.
On our to-do list.
Yep.
Now, unlike the Cadillac Hotel, the Arctic Club stands as a remnant of the Klondike Gold Rush, but largely represents the other end of the spectrum. Those who managed to strike it rich and return to Seattle as forever changed will be known. The Arctic Club was the first formed in 1907 by those successful gold mining veterans. It started as a social club for businessmen with gold rush and Alaska connections, but it soon grew and needed more permanent space for it to meet in. The resulting building opened its doors in 1960. It was originally financed by club member James Moses and was designed in a Beaux Arts style that was revolutionary for the time. The club, which dissolved in 1970, was formed by a merging of the original Arctic Club and the Alaska Club, founded by the Klondike Gold Rush tycoons E.A. Hashlocher, an Alaskan, and former Chicago journalist A.D. Coulter. While experience in the Arctic was not a necessary requirement for membership, the social club's original plan had been to create a fun and lively atmosphere for those who had experiences to bond, drink, and reminisce about the glory days on the frontier. Another benefit from having membership in the club was the ability to buy and sell precious land in Alaska and the Yukon. Not every member came back from prospecting with the mountains of gold, but most had claims to good plots that were worth a pretty penny to the right buyer. The hotel is still full of Arctic flair, including 27 terracotta walruses adorning the exterior of the third floor. Once, there was even a stuffed polar bear above the entrance, but it has since been removed, leaving the polar bear that famously adored the corner of the ballroom as the only one left standing. The ballroom, known as the Northern Lights Dome Room, is a 3,600-foot grand ballroom with stained glass ceiling that beautifully mimics the natural coloration of the Northern Lights. In addition to its many luxurious hotel rooms, the Arctic Club also houses a cigar store, a library, a bowling alley, a barber shop, a rooftop garden, an elegant ladies' tea room, several gaming rooms, private dining rooms, and an office for political figures who have visited over the years. The building that houses the Arctic Club was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978 and later became a hotel until 2008. With the gold rush history at its foundation, the Arctic Club has long been reputed as one of the most haunted buildings in Seattle, frequented by the roaming spirits of those who once stayed at the popular establishment. Among the most common incidences are the ghostly whispers of the long-dead Seattle businessmen as they discuss their frontier deals. Late at night, conversations can be heard floating through the halls and swirling around the famous swanky Polar Bar. Disembodied footsteps can also be heard throughout the building, with a hint of cigar smoke occasionally wafting through the rooms, despite this being a no-smoking premises. One of the more specific hauntings starts in 1936 with Washington Congressman Marion Zajanczak. Zajanczak became the first Democrat to win an election to the state's first district in 1932, and in 1936 he started his re-election campaign while staying on the 5th floor of the Arctic Club, a campaign that would be shrouded in controversy. When Zajanczak filed for re-election, he had already told his friend Warren Magson that he was planning to retire, a decision that many thought for the best, and Magnuson subsequently filed to run for election in Zajanczak's place. The United Press had already written Zajanczak off as a national joke, but why, do you ask? Well, Zajanczak was a man of many eccentricities, including sending President Roosevelt empty beer bottles and mothballs as a gift, driving recklessly on the White House lawn, dancing in the fountains, and on June 1st of 1936, Zajanczak was arrested on lunacy warrant and confined to a psychiatric ward. Doctors blamed stress and the hectic lifestyle on his mental break. He escaped custody while being transferred to a private facility and fled back to Washington State, where he was granted congressional immunity for his transgressions. While back in his home state, he was able to begin his re-election campaign in earnest, but that wouldn't last too long. On August 7th of 1936, Zajanczak, for unknown reasons, decided to throw himself out of his office window, falling 5 stories to the pavement, a messy, horrific death. To make matters worse, he landed right in front of his wife, Ruby, who had just pulled up to the hotel. Today, it's said that the elevator will often go to the 5th floor without any buttons being pressed, and pedestrians passing by from Cherry Street have said they have seen a ghostly apparition of Zajanczak laid out on the concrete, or even in the air mid-fall. Inside the hotel, Zajanczak himself, as well as floating orbs, have been spotted near the room that once served as his office. With that grim note, we're going to move on to a lighter fact about the Arctic Club. After moving from their original location on 3rd Avenue and Jefferson Street, many of the club's original members found themselves missing one of the best features of their former home, the Arctic Bar. One night, not entirely sober, a couple of the members got together for a secret heist. They returned to the original location, which had since been reopened as a hotel, and hoisted the Arctic Bar in its entirety out of a nearby window, dragging it to the Arctic Club for its installation. The president of the club, who didn't realize what had happened until the old bar had been reinstalled in the new location, was forced to pay for the stolen bar.
Nothing spooky about it, just a fun fact.
Sounds a bit like Tony's from the US.
A little bit, yeah. So, Alex asked a question, a little bit, how did we get into this?
COVID.
Well, I mean...
Are you talking about like ghosts?
Oh,
Sorry.
ghostly stuff? Okay, yeah.
So long story short, because there we could go ahead and go off on all kinds of tangents. We personally, individually, growing up, were very interested, exposed to haunted history stuff.
And hauntings.
So you more so with the hauntings, me with the haunted history and just being fascinated with it. So we both kind of grew up with the interest. Beth wound up actually starting a ghost tour at her university up at St. Lawrence when she was in school. And after we both graduated and we were getting ready to, get a start with careers, day jobs and stuff like that, we wound up moving to Richmond. After a couple of years, Beth went to work for the founders of Haunts of Richmond.
And now we're here.
Scott and Sandy. I wound up coming on board a couple of years later. And then at the end of 2015, Scott and Sandy decided that they wanted to retire from the ghost tour business, looked at us, asked if we wanted to take it over, and
Voila.
Ta-da! Here we are. So that is a very brief version of how we got into this. Again, we could go off on all kinds of little tangents and stuff like that.
So we still have another story to do. And this one's fun because Chris found it in a newspaper.
Yeah, so...
An old newspaper.
Yep. So, let us know in the comments if that answers your question, Alex. If not, we can go ahead. We can answer a couple other questions after I finish this last story for this evening. So, this might be Seattle's oldest ghost story. So, it starts with some historic context. Provided via the following excerpts from an article published on January 4th of 2009 by the Seattle Met by Nina Pelton. So, fairly recent article, but it goes into a bit of the history about our ghost, what will be our ghost story. So, this is by and large quoted from the article. Last July, Seattle's Department of Neighborhoods released an eye-opening inventory of 200-plus downtown buildings that might require historic landmark protection. Here's one that got away. The G. Morris Haller building yielded 50 years ago to one of Seattle's first modern skyscrapers. Lost with the building was the memory of its namesake builder, though he was once a rising star on Seattle's civic and commercial scene. George Morris Haller knew danger and adventure from an early age. At age 12, he fought at Gettysburg beside his father, Major Granville O. Haller, a renowned and today notorious Indian fighter who fled to the western wild Washington Territory after supposedly insulting President Lincoln and acquired sprawling tracts of land. With that leg up, Morris Haller climbed fast. He became one of Seattle's top lawyers. Young Haller had vast holdings in 7 counties, including nearly 2,000 acres in what is Seattle today. He organized train and utility companies and served as Assistant Adjutant General of the Washington National Guard. Then, on June 6th of 1889, the Great Fire devastated Seattle. Haller and other businessmen saw the chance to replace charred wooden buildings with the sort of brick and stone downtown a real city ought to have. He hired Elmer H. Fisher, one of post-fire Seattle's most prolific architects, to design a 5-story commercial building at the corner of 2nd and Cherry. Soon after construction began, in early December 1889, Haller set out on a duck hunting trip with Dr. Thomas T. Miner, a physician, civic leader, and public schools advocate, and Lewis Cox, a 22-year-old apprentice in Haller's law office, who is also his wife Anna's brother. The 3 embarked from Stanwood by canoe, intending to cross Skagit Bay and the treacherous Saratoga Passage to Whidbey Island. They never made it. Search parties found some of their belongings washed up on the frigid shore. Assuming the trio had drowned, Seattleites turned out for a massive memorial service 2 weeks later. Local and state dignitaries heaped on accolades, praising Haller's and Miner's civic leadership. Anna Haller had lost a brother and, after just a year of marriage, a husband, and still the tragedies piled up. Among the relatives who came to Seattle to offer comfort was Anna's 14-year-old brother Norman. On January 3rd, 1890, he went sledding, crashed into a telegraph pole, and died within the hour. That same day, Morris Haller's badly decomposed body surfaced off Whidbey Island. The newspapers responded with extravagant expressions of sympathy and horror, but Anna was practical. She postponed Norman's funeral so she could bury them both together the next day. Her brother Edward's body was found in February on Camino Island. Miner's was never recovered. When Haller died, he already had invested $40,000 in his building. His parents spent $20,000 more to complete it and blazoned his name across the cornice. But over the ensuing 34 years, they let the building run down. Finally, they sold it to the Seattle's Title Trust Company. It was demolished in 1957 to make way for the 19-story Norton building. A few years after Morris's death, Anna Haller's name disappeared from the newspapers and the phone directory. By 1948, only one descendant of Granville O. Haller still lived in town. Now, none of the Hallers listed in the directory claim any relation to him. Only Haller Lake, which Morris's brother Theodore named for himself after purchasing land alongside it, perpetuates the family name in Seattle. Had a curse fallen on Morris Haller's clan? If so, it seemed to reach even his architect, Elmer Fisher. After designing much of the city that sprouted up after the fire, Fisher lost his own property in the Panic of 1893. He moved to Los Angeles and died in obscurity in 1905. Few of his many buildings stand today, but one, the magnificent stone-clad Pioneer Building, still dominates Pioneer Square, a Romanesque revival reminder of a time when cities were built in a year and fortunes rose in the blink of an eye, and ended with the tip of a canoe. Now that wraps up the story that was reported in the Seattle Met. But as tragic as that tale is, where's the spooky bit? The following short bit was later reported by Gwendolyn C. Plescherchef. On December 2nd, 1899, my mother was visiting Miss Henrietta Haller, the mother of G. Morris Haller, when she mentioned she had witnessed seeing her son earlier that day. "Oh, I just saw Morris, and he was standing there, with his jacket off," she stated, unaware of the tragedy that had befallen him just hours prior to her encounter. And I think that was actually meant to be December 2nd, 1889. So, anyways, completely unaware of the tragedy that had befallen him just hours prior to the encounter. So, is it possible that Gwendolyn's mother had seen the ghost of Haller wandering the streets of Seattle? Maybe he was trying to get word to someone about what had happened that fateful day. So, that is what might be Seattle's oldest ghost story, dating back to 1889. And with that does bring us to our last story for tonight. And Facebook is once again throwing up the random thumbs ups, which, yeah. But anyways, and we answered Alex's.
People tapping on their phone.
Is that what's going on?
Yeah, that's people liking and tapping on there.
Yeah, and we just got fireworks.
Whoa, smart
Okay,
guys.
all right, cool. Cool, all right. Excuse me.
Sorry, it's just the elderly bosses.
Yeah, every time Facebook changes something, we don't love it.
It's been like that for years.
Yet we don't learn it.
I didn't have it on Facebook Live until just earlier this year.
No, dude, it's been a thing for since COVID.
But we haven't seen it on our things.
Gotcha.
So, anyways. But yeah, glad you all enjoyed the fireworks there at the end. Ta-da!
Just
Yes. So, Lee's elderly bosses are going to go ahead and we will be calling it a night. You can
the voice is starting to go.
Our voices are starting to go a little bit. So,
it's the most talking we've done in a week.
It is, yeah. We didn't even talk this much on the podcast. But, yeah. So, but thank you very much for watching for our little Haunted Seattle.
Yeah, so we are taking off for Seattle. We're going to be gone for 2 weeks.
Almost 2 weeks.
Almost 2 weeks. We're still debating whether or not we're going to do a show from Seattle.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll either be back in 2 or 3 weeks. It's probably going to be a relatively short notice. We'll figure it out.
It'll be Haunted Washington.
Yeah, so we've done Seattle tonight. We're going to go ahead and explore some of the haunts from the rest of the state of Washington on the next episode. Whether that is 2 or 3 weeks from now, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, feel free, come on out, join us for a tour. Tours are still going, and
Well, okay, so we are going to go to Kel's Bar, in Pike's Market. We're going to go to the Klondike Museum. Are all places that we're planning to go to. We are also booked on Spooked in Seattle Ghost Tour.
Yeah.
We are going to do the underground tour as well. And we've talked about the underground in one of our tunnels and something.
Yeah. We also have talked about Kel's Bar before.
Yeah, one of our haunted bars.
Was that a haunted restaurant episode or something? But so we've talked about Kel's. I think we may even address another Seattle location here or there, most likely. But anyway,
those are the places that we're planning to go to. We're not staying in a haunted hotel. Hotels in Seattle are expensive.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, they're expensive.
So, anyways,
Airbnb.
wait, if we have the chance to walk by or something like that, maybe we'll duck into the Art Club bar too.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to just see the architecture in there.
To go ahead and maybe get a drink at the Polar Bar or something like that. But yeah, so that's the plan. We'll probably post a couple pictures of us checking out some spooky locations while we're there.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out how to get a Henri through security without them looking at me funny.
Yeah. That's not with the stuff that they see. I think a
coffin ghost.
A little felted ghost in a mini coffin is going to be.
I mean, they looked at me funny when I brought drinking horns back from the run here in Colorado. So
they've seen worse.
Yes, they have.
And weirder. Anyways.
Because Henri is becoming our traveling ghost for our Facebook and Instagram posts.
Yeah. So, with that, we will go ahead. We will bid you a good night. My voice is
Your
had
shot.
it.
Yep.
That this is it for me. So, thank you again for watching. Hope to see you back here on our next episode, whether that's 2 or 3 weeks from now, and also be great to see you in person if you come on out and join us and our amazing guides on the tour sometime.
Yeah, I'm an amazing guide.
Yes,
you are an amazing guide. Yep. So. When's your next tour, Lee?
God, I don't know. I have a tour tomorrow, but not with you guys.
That's now. Yeah. But anyways, all right. Good night, everybody.
When do I have a tour with you?
I don't know.